Hello, everybody. Good morning. I hope that
Good
you are all
morning.
doing well. Good morning from Accra, Ghana, where we are hosting this webinar from. But I know that we are joined with participants from all over the world. And if this is your first time interacting with us, this is Participatory Development Associates, and we are a social development consultancy that is headquartered and based in Ghana, but we work all over the world, especially all over Africa. And we've been doing development work for several years. Our PDA Africa has been working very much in communities and especially supporting the area of child welfare and child protection. And our conversation today is really going to be diving deep into what really that means when it comes to the community sector. I know that one of the most popular proverbs that we all like to quote is the fact that it takes a village to raise a child. And from today's conversation, we want to take that one step further and really delve into what does it mean when we talk about protection and how does the village actually protect children? Are there times in which the village can actually be harmful to the child? And what can formal child protection structures and systems do to ensure that we are strengthening, supporting, working with communities and traditional leaders, the village, to be able to make sure that children are protected and they are given the opportunity to thrive, to grow, and to become people who can contribute to strengthening the community for the rest of time. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. Like I've said, we are very happy to have you on call. Do make sure to introduce yourself in the chat so that we know who is here with us. We are recording the session just so that we can have some evidence of it. Later on, we'll be sharing it on our YouTube page as PDA, and we'll be sharing the slides, especially with those of us who have been able to join the call today. So do look forward to that. Just a few housekeeping rules before I hand over to our speakers for today. You will notice that your microphones and your cameras have been automatically turned off. That's intentional so that we prevent distractions and disruptions to the network as much as possible. So for now, and especially during the time when our presenters are speaking, you can put in your comments and your reactions and even your questions in the chat box, but also make use of the Microsoft Teams function of Q&A. We'll be monitoring all those to ensure that we don't miss any comment that comes through. Um, After the speakers have spoken, we will give some dedicated amount of time to take questions and answers and experiences from our audience. And so when it gets to that portion of time, I will notify you and you will have the option to raise your hand if you have a question or you have something to share. And then we'll be unmute you and give you the opportunity to speak to the whole room. So thank you all. And having said that, I'm very glad to welcome our first presenter for the day. He is actually the head of department at the Suhum Metropolitan Assembly's Department of Social Welfare and Community Development. And we welcome to speak and to share with us today our friend, our colleague, and working on behalf of the whole nation of Ghana, Mr. Ernest Evans Ewusi. Ernest, if you're with us, maybe this is the time you can say a quick hello and go into presentation mode, and then we can take your presentation for the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Asida, and good morning to everyone. Just like Asida said, my name is Ernest Evans Ewusi, the municipal head for Suhum Municipal Assembly, and I'm also glad to have the opportunity to share my experiences in working with the department. And I will start with this. When I started working, I thought being a development worker is all about telling the people what they need to do, not knowing that the solutions that we seek for lies with them. And we needed to get a little bit closer before we could know that, before we find solutions to issues within the communities, the solutions lies with them. But they will need a little blend from the former institutions to make sure things work the way we all want, so that the children that we seek to protect will be well protected, and the bright future we are looking out for will come true, and will raise future leaders that when we are gone, they can take over from us. So that is by way of introduction. Thank you very much. Uh, Please, so this
Yes.
morning, I said, I think you can see my screen.
Yes, we can. But maybe you might want to go into presentation mode so
Yeah, I've
that
done that.
we can. All right. Thank you.
Okay. So this morning we are talking about the cultural norms and child protection in Ghana. So we are looking at the intersection of tradition, the community, and the legal framework. So this is my table of content, and I will zoom straight to the introduction and then the context. So in the first place, we ask the question, who is a child? So according to the United Nations Convention on the Right of the Child, Article 28 of the 1992 Constitution, and then Section 1 of the Children's Act 560 of 1998, a child is a person below the age of 18 years. That is, in our legal books, that is who we classify a person to be a child. But when the person finds himself in conflict with the law and still needs protection, we say that person will get protection until the age of 21 years. However, in the context of the Child and Family Welfare Policy, which was brought to bear in 2025, which I was also blessed to be part of the whole process, the main purpose for the Child and Family Welfare Policy and then the Justice for Children Policy was to make sure that in our context as Ghanaians, we frame policies that can suit the local content. That is, that can be able to be used by the local authorities, the chief and elders, opinion leaders within the communities. So, in that definition, we are saying that the child in the Ghanaian context, as one who is still largely dependent on an adult for the necessities of life. So you all agree with me that in our local uh, communities, we always see children, once you are still under the roof of your parents, whether you are 25, whether you are 30, you are still considered a child until you move out of the roof of your parents. So we'll look at the legal frameworks that brought child protection into being. So when we talk about child protection, why child protection? The 1992 Constitution, Article 28, talking about the rights of every person, the UNCRC, the Children's Act, the ILO Convention 138 and 182, the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child. All these are legal frameworks that is giving the Department of Social Welfare and Community Development under the Gender Ministry or the local government to be able to protect children within our communities by going strictly by these rules or these legal frameworks that have been put in place. Yeah, so I was talking about the fact that all these legal frameworks were put in place to enable us be able to give protection to children as department or development workers. So all these policies are there. But along the line, we will see how these legal frameworks uh, goes in tender with the communities that we work in. So we are now talking about a system of two worlds. So when we talk about the system of two worlds, we are talking about the written laws and then the what we call the traditional system, where cultural norms the chiefly authorities or the chiefs and the community values shape how children are raised, disciplined, and integrated into daily life. So when you come into law, like I've already said, the Children's Act gives the department the mandate to provide statutory protection and legal recourse to children's welfare. But when we get to the community, we also uh, get to know the fact that they also had their own style of remediating cases or issues when they happen within the community. And the tension is between we negotiating between the modern human rights standard, that is the laws that the state has given us, and then the long-standing cultural expectations. So before the laws came in, we had the traditional authorities having their own style of remediating cases as and when they happen. But now that we have the statutory laws, like I said earlier, we need to blend the two to make sure that we are all on an even path where the traditional authorities, the community will accept the fact that this is what they have, this is what the law is saying, and then how can we blend it? So as a department, we go to communities to do community engagement, form community child protection committees, just to make sure we engage them to know what the policies are saying and then how we can blend these two together to ensure that together we safely bring children up the way we want them to be, so that at the end of the day, the state will be rest assured that when the leaders are gone, we can have next leaders to take over the mantle. So, as that, just like you said, we always say that it takes a village to raise a child. And the communal upbringing model is one of Ghana's greatest cultural strengths and one of its most complex child protection challenges. So we are looking at how does the community protect children. Gone are the days where we say every child is everybody's child. And for that matter, when I'm leaving the house and my child is there, I'm rest assured that my neighbors will take care of the children that I will leave behind before I'll come back. So when we look at the protective factors, we are saying that in the village or the community level, we have multiple caregivers, having the aunties, the uncles, all taking care of children, providing social safety net, food, shelter, and security, so that to the extent that when you are away, you are rest assured that your children are in safe hands. But there is also a challenge when responsibility is shared by all. We say that accountability can become diffused, and then external interventions may be perceived as an intrusion into family autonomy. So now we've grown out of Obiaba Yemiba to where I take care of my children alone, and when Auntie Akusia's children are misbehaving, I don't care. So now we've moved from the collateral sources where everybody within the community takes care of children, and now we are in the nuclear family system, which is seriously affecting the children and their upbringing today. So, what can we do? What we can do as development partners and agencies is to clearly sign rules and create awareness and empower community members to act decisively to protect children without fear of backlash. So, like I said earlier on, as development workers or social protection agencies like social welfare community development, when we go to the communities, we try our best to engage community members to understand that gone are the days where you say, during my father's time, he had a cocoa farm, and then at any time we go to the cocoa farm to work. And then I don't see the need why you should say that taking my child to the farm becomes child labor or tends to be child exploitation. We needed to explain all these things to community members to even understand what the hazardous activity framework even talks about when it comes to dealing with children. At which age can a child be engaged in light work? At which stage would a child enter into apprenticeship? And at which age a child can go into full employment? These are some of the empowerment that as a department we also offer the community so that anytime they are dealing with the children, they will know that when I do this, I go into conflict with the law and the law will deal with me. Then we are also looking at discipline versus physical abuse. So, like I said earlier on, we always say that spare the rod and spoil the child. So, culturally, we think corporal punishment is widely seen as a model for character shaping and raising respectful, hardworking children. But you and I know that in this modern era and the kind of children we are raising, it's not a matter of spare the rod and spoil the child. It's a matter of bringing children closer to you, talking to them to understand perfectly why you are doing what you want to do for them so that they also have a bright future. So we are looking at the impact on protection. So in the local community, they say, yes, I have to cane my child so that he'll be respectful. And in the course of correcting these children, we inflict abusive pains, which will cause physical abuse, cause emotional and then psychological trauma to these kids. Then we are looking at the way forward. As a department, we are replacing those blanket bans on caning with community-led education on non-violent alternatives. So when we talk about the non-violent alternatives, we are talking about positive parenting. What is the best way that as parents we can stop the physical, the emotional, the psychological abuse that will put our children through and rather tend to draw our children closer to us, let the children have confidence in us, we show them love and care, and then they will now trust us more. And then when they even have issues, they can come to us and then so together we'll help them solve those problems. So we are looking at child labor and then socialization. Like I said earlier, we always say that this is what my parent did. So I want to put this question to those on the call. If your father happened to be a pilot, will it be the case that when your father is going on his mission, like flying people outside to another country, he will fix you to join him in his plane as a co pilot, all in the name of training you? I don't think that will be the case. But in our local parlance, you always hear community members saying that yes, it was in fishing, that was what my father was doing, and that is what I learned, and now I'm also a fisherman. So why can't my child also go to fishing with me? Then we come back to the hazardous activity framework and then the Labor Act, what it's talk about when it comes to dealing with children and the kind of work they can also do. So we are saying that the work that children will do must not become exploitatory in nature and it shouldn't have a toll on their building up process. So you go to communities and you have resistance to labor laws enforcement, and then they always tell us that we are bringing Western interferences into the way they bring up their children. But like I said earlier on, if your father is a pilot, will he take you on his Next, flight assignment, no. So that is what we need to let the community members also know. So the laws are there, the cultural norms are also there, but we need to find a way of bridging them together so that we can all move on an equal path to make sure that we bring up children who will be responsible, loving, and will take up responsibilities when it's time for them to do. So now we look at the traditional authority and the dispute resolution. In most Ghanaian communities, sorry, we have chiefs and queen mothers who hold immediate authority than distance courts. So many welfare cases are resolved through traditional arbitration rather than formal legal channels. So members on the call will look at these four quadrants and I will move in a clockwise direction. When we look at the high community relevance, we see the traditional arbitration, which we say for the community is fast and community led. Fast and the community led because when the issues come, traditional authorities are able to sit on it. They look at what happens, they look at who is at fault, they call for apologies, they put some small fines for whoever is at fault to compensate the victim. But you and I know that when it comes to certain issues, so as a department, when we go to the communities, we tell them that what you are doing is okay. But in law, we have uh, high risk cases that we term it as first degree felony, such as defilement, rape, or sexual misconduct, that at the community level, traditional authorities are not mandated to sit on. So we need to explain those things to them and then give them the channel where they can present those issues. Probably that is to the former institutions like social welfare, to DOFSU, and then to SHRAJ to work on those issues. So we explain things to them so that they understand it. So we let them know that there are high risk cases and there are other cases that are the non legal level. Chief and opinion leaders can also sit on those cases and arbitrate. And then we have even given them the option that when they are not satisfied with the outcome, they can also even move it a federal level to the former institutions to deal with. And then when you come to the second quadrant, you see the formal court, which the community sees as legal and rigorous, and then child centered. Yes, it's child centered at the court because the Children's Act says that in any case concerning a child, whichever panel that will sit down, whether at the court, whether at ADR, the welfare principle is there that the interest of every child in any case shall be paramount. So the community members see it that the formal court, be it the district court, the juvenile court, the family tribunal, is child centered. And yes, that is the mandate that the law gives us because we need to look at the child at the center and look at what will be best for that child, devoid of what the two families are talking about. We look at the best interest of the child. And then in the third quadrant, we are looking at traditional arbitration, cultural relevance, and harmony focused. So you see highly legal formality and low community reverence. So the community prefer those traditional arbitrations because they think it's better because with the formal institutions If you don't have time, you have to go, come, cases will be adjourned, and it's tedious for them. So when you come to the fourth quadrant, you see that they are saying that the former courts are slow and less accessible. And they are saying it's slow because of the processes it takes for a case to be resolved amicably. And they are saying it's less accessible because they don't even know the channels to go through if they can't afford going direct. So, as a department, we always inform them that when you have issues and you can't go through the court straight, you can also fall on us to mediate and then facilitate getting access to legal aid so that your issues will be resolved. Then, coming back to the high profile cases, normally we explain to community members that when it comes to issues of defilement, we only look at the surface, who is at fault. Okay, we are all one family. Let's compensate the victim and the parent, and then the case dies. And as a department, we only come to know these cases when the amicable solutions are agreed upon and the victim or the perpetrator is not forthcoming with the agreement that was made when they sat. And then that is where they will come in to the department to seek further redress. But we all know that when it comes to rape and defilement, within the first 24 hours, if you don't get evidence, you cannot proceed with the case. And aside that, there are also other issues, medical conditions that the children, the victim will go through, the psychological and the emotional trauma. And for me, I always tell community members that when a child is defiled and then we don't give that child the proper medical and then the psychological counseling that she needs, this child will grow up, marry, and then when it's time for her to have an intimate relationship with the husband, it becomes a fight because at the sight of the husband trying to have an affair with her, she reflects on what happened to her during her childhood. And it will take a lot of effort to clear that doubt from that young adult who is now married to get rid of that trauma, to enjoy the relationship or the marriage that she has gotten herself into. So a lot goes into just saying that, okay, you offended him, pay this, and let sleeping dogs lie. So we are also looking at the emerging threats and then harmful practices. We are looking at spiritual accusations. So in Ghana, we had issues of witchcraft accusation labeled on children, and then even at birth, the child might come with a condition, and then traditional authorities will sit down and say, "We dear, oye busumba nti ɛsɛ yɛgya no kwan," and then they will, through spiritual belief systems, try to do ways and means to get rid of the child, which if maybe they seek medical assistance, the condition of that child will improve. So there are a lot of things that happen within the communities that we are not aware, because sometimes communities protect their own simply because they think they are all one family, and then you cannot uh, disclose the misharm that one family member is doing to a child. So we always try to cover up those issues. And then we have issues of early marriages, which we are still battling with. I don't think it's out of the system yet. because now in Ghana we have other tribes from Niger, Mali, uh, having permanent residence in Ghana, and they think with their laws back in Niger and Mali, children can be betrothed or minors can be betrothed into marriage, particularly their girl child. So they betroth or give their girl child hands in marriage. And just last month, I have to deal with one of these cases in the district where a chief of one of the tribes was trying to give her 13-year-old child hands out in marriage to a man in Nigeria who is even older than he himself. So the child had to rush to Shraj on a tips from one of her teachers. So social welfare and Shraj had to report the issue to the MCE and then to the police commander so that we can intervene to ensure that that child gets the needed protection and support from the department so that she will not be betrothed to that elderly man who is even older than the father. So that is what is happening in terms of the early marriage. And then we can also talk about the issues of the kayayi, which is common in the urban centers where girl child move from the northern part of the region and then the Volta area coming in search of greener pastures. Even where to sleep is an issue, and other men also take advantage of them and do things that are not to their consent, to the extent that some even end up getting pregnant and even not knowing who is responsible for that pregnancy. So, uh, because they seek financial independence, they expose themselves to exploitation, abuse, and then lack of education. Because they always say that it's kind of. So once we are getting money, there's no need for us to go to school. Sorry. So we are looking at the cultural element, the protective factors, and the risk factors. So we say every cultural practices carries a dual potential. So there's the protective factor and then the risk factor. Let's look at the extended family system. The external family system provides emotional and then financial support network, but it can also shield abusers to avoid shame. Because if somebody is within the extended family is providing financial support to your child and he takes advantage of that child, you cannot voice it out because you think that is the person taking care of that child. And for that matter, there's no need reporting that child because if I do, who is going to take care of that child? And that also poses the child to risk and danger. So, in as much as our cultural norms also protect the children, it equally can have a negative effect on the child as well. And then we look at apprenticeship, skills acquisition, and trade training. So children go into apprenticeship, and because of that, they exit early from formal education. So I think this time we are also promoting skill training. But the point is, if a child will be able to acquire skills, that child will still need some formal training to know how to write common ABCD 1, 2, 3 before that child can even go into apprenticeship. Then we look at the traditional rights. So, in the communities where we work, we say that it's a sense of identity and belonging. And through this, children, especially the girl child, are taken through harmful traditional practices like the trokoshi, the genital mutilation, and other things which harmfully affect especially the girl child. And then we also talk about the religious beliefs. That's the moral guidance and community cohesion. Like I said earlier on, you see, we always say that every child is everybody's child. So, religiously, we believe that we should all come together to make sure we protect, provide this moral guidance for these children. But at the end of the day, we also talked about the witchcraft accusations against these children. Certain children are born with special needs. So you can give birth to a child and the child might have one hand or might have uh, the legs amputated before birth or right from birth. And then traditionally they will say that, oh, akwala with for as for this child is a musioba, so we need to get rid of that child. And that also affect that child because we don't even know what this child will become in future, but because we don't understand that these are special features that the child came with, and that as a community or as a society we should embrace it and then make sure that we give a helping hand so that the child can develop and have his or her full potential. Then we look at the cultural element of having respect for others. Now, when we go to society or communities to engage them, they always tell us that you've done child rights now. Children even don't respect. So for the community, they saw it to be a way of putting the children into order and then making sure that they become respectful. And then this when we encourage at the community level, where we always say that children must respect elders. So even when they are dealing, even if they are dealing with them and it's in the negative form, these children cannot talk because they said they should respect elders. But we as a department is also teaching the children to be assertive and to fight for their right and to be vocal and to be able to speak out. So with support from other CSOs, we've been able to uh, form child protection club. We've trained chaperones, and then children are now able to report issues that normally and ideally would have been hidden among members within the community. So we are blending the cultural and then the legal policies to make sure that yes, children will respect, but they also know their right and know when to speak out when something is being done to them, which will negatively affect their growth and development, and then protecting them as children. Then we look at the recommendations and the way forward. So we are saying that effective child protection in Ghana requires culturally informed strategies that engage and not override existing community structures. So, like I said earlier on, the community before the coming into being of all these legal policies had their own way of dealing with issues when they come. So, policies, we are saying in terms of cultural mapping, policies must be tailored towards specific ethnic and regional norms rather than applying a one size fits all model. So, as institutions, when we enter the community, like I said in my preamble, I always thought being a development worker is always about solving community issues. But once the solution lies with them, you judge with them so that together, as you bring the legal policies into being, you also consider what they also uphold as a community so that together we can all move in a right direction that will provide care and protection for children. And then we also have been engaging traditional authorities as a primary champions of child rights within the communities. So, as a department, the formation of the community child protection committees that we form at the community levels to ensure that children are protected. We have representation from the chief and opinion leaders, the women groups, the youth groups, and we have teachers or nurses being reps on those committees so that together we'll be able to check the issues and make sure that together we all ensure the right and the protection of the child. And I also talked about promoting positive discipline. So we've gone ahead to sensitize communities on the best way of providing care for their children, not necessarily by meting out abusive punishment. You can discipline your child by denying your child the best tool he or she would love to play all the time. Just like the whites always say, the white will tell you that, my dear, you are grounded because I said you should do this and you didn't listen to me. You are not going to play with maybe your toy or your laptop or your tablet for the rest of the week. And to them, it's punishing enough because that is what the child loves playing with. So at our local level, we look at what the child loves doing best. And because he was disobedient, we can say that because you did ABC, you will not have the opportunity to play or do what you like most. If he likes going to play football, he said, okay, because you were disobedient this week, you are not going to play football the whole week. And that will be punishment enough. And there are other methods. I've gone to a school that the child, when the child was just standing outside and waving, and that was a form of punishment the teacher gave to that child. Yes, it's a form of punishment, but the question is for how long will the child also continue doing the waving, and what will be the effect on the two of that child mentally and physically as well as emotionally. So we are also talking about strengthening social welfare and community development department. We will urge the government to also increase the funding and the capacity for the department to ensure legal enforcement when cultural norms fail to protect the children that we have been mandated to take care of. So I know we have a lot of development partners on the call, and those who are part of our technical working group at the national level. I will plead with them that when they sit with the big men at the top, for me, I always say that the department will be able to function and do well if the state will set a standalone budget for the department to do its case management, uh, do follow ups, and ensure that when people need legal representation, it's done. But when you have to rely on the GOG, which never comes, then all that we can do as a department is to do with the little that our hands and legs can afford. And that will go a long way to affect the way we protect children within our community. In conclusion, we say that evolving culture and protecting children. Effective child protection in Ghana does not mean erasing culture. It means involving it. Why would we evolve? Culture is not static, it's dynamic. So as we bring in the legal systems, We also let the community also know that uh, we are moving forward and we are in a global age where technology has taken over, and then cultural norms cannot be static. It has to move with the test of time and then what the laws have provided for us to do with. So the goal is a system where the safety of children is the ultimate priority of both the chief and the court. So culturally, at the community level, we can protect children and make sure they are safe. And then when it comes to the policies, we will also make sure that the chief and opinion leaders also go by the rules of the former institution so that we can bridge the legal frameworks with cultural realities through evidence based and cultural sensitive enforcement so that when the issues come, the chief can confidently call social welfare, call Shraj, call Dovsu and say that this is what is happening within my community. I want you to take action. And that will let all of us as development partners get to know that yes, we are bridging culture with the legal frameworks that we have. And now there's an understanding so that at the end of the day, the traditional leader will confidently be a champion of positive discipline and ensure that the rights of children are protected within the community. And then together we will all ensure that the future and the prospects of our children are upheld so that as a country we will have better future leaders. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ewusi, and so much has been shared. I know everyone has really been benefiting from some of the really critical issues you raised. And I love one of the closing statements you made that the goal is a system where the safety of the child is the ultimate priority of both the chief and the court. It's no longer going to be something that's being enforced, being threatened, being intimidated, by formal, external, in quote, systems, but that right within the traditional setting, within the community, it is a priority for children to be protected. Thank you very much. I think one
Thank
of the
you.
things you also said that re-echoes a question that is in the chat, two related questions that are in the chat, has to do with the psychological abuse or the trauma, the kind of emotional challenges sometimes that children face as a result of discipline or some of the cultural norms. And so it's a really interesting question. I've pinned it in the chat, Adam. Thank you for asking it. But we want to take our second presenter now. And right after that, we will open the floor for more questions and interaction. So if you have questions, do just drop them in the chat box. We will take notice of it. And then when the second presenter is done, we will open the floor for everybody to be able to contribute. We are loving the people who are on the call. We've seen people from all over, from development organizations, from the government side, from Shraj, from the Ministry of Health, from Ministry of Education. We are just happy to have you on call. Thank you all so much. With that, I want to introduce our second speaker for today. He's in the person of Mr. Kamil Abdul Salam, and he works with PDA Africa as a project lead for our child labor remediation program. And he works often with the Department of Social Welfare and Community Development, but is also very well versed in issues of child protection and child welfare. And so, Kamil, we hand over to you. And please do remember that you have roughly 40 minutes so that we can make time to take contributions from the House. I will try and be prompting you across a number of formats. So please just be attentive to me. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Asida. Good morning to everyone on call.
Good
Um,
morning.
On behalf of Participatory Development Associates and PDA Africa, I would like to thank each and every one of you for making time to be part of today's event. My name is Kamel Abdul Salam, and I'm with PDA Africa. PDA Africa is a subsidiary of PDA, or Participatory Development Associates Ghana. My presentation will look at the culture, community, and child protection. Ernest has already elaborated a lot on it, so I will be throwing in some practical experiences that we encounter as a team, as a child protection team, when we go down to the community to work. Some of the stories or the experiences that we encounter and how it affects or how the community deals with these things, the bad and then the ugly. And then by drawing lessons from these experiences and then scenarios, I hope that the goal of the presentation is to emphasize effective child protection, to emphasize that, the message that effective child protection requires balancing respect for culture, tradition, with adherence to the legal principles, ensuring that every child's welfare and future is safeguarded. Now, Ernest touched on who a child is, culturally and then legally. Culturally, the normal Ghanaian traditional setting, as Ernest already espoused, a child is not defined by age. So culturally, we look at the social role, the responsibility, and then the relationships. There's no fixed age for a child culturally, and so sorry, please forgive me when I'm battling a severe cough this morning. So if my cough is interrupting the presentation, kindly forgive me. So as I said, culturally, even someone who is at the age of 25 can be regarded as a child. I remember very well, we visited a community in the Upper East region, and they were having, one of the household was having a household meeting. And we realized that all the ladies were sitting somewhere, and the younger one, the boys, age 10, 11, 12, were all sitting in the meeting, which was a very critical meeting that borders the well-being of the household. So we asked the ladies, why are you far away from where these meetings are happening, but they have little boys even sitting within these meetings? And they said, yes, these, although they are boys, but they are not just boys. In future, they are the ones that are coming to take over the household. And so the elders involve them in everything that they do. But for us, they regard us as, they don't give us that kind of regard. And so we are not allowed to sit in such a meeting. Then a child in traditional Akan or many of these cultures around the country, you become an adult when you undergo these rights, you marry to establish your own home, or you are able to contribute to the family well-being. But the section 1 of the Act 560 gives a vivid definition of who a child is, which is someone who is a person below the age of 18 years old. Now, what is the bottom line? The bottom line is that any person who, in a normal traditional culture, anyone who is under the care, guidance, authority of parents, and has not yet assumed full adult social and economic responsibility is regarded as a child. And so when you enter into a community and you are dealing with some of these people, some of these households, sometimes it's difficult. You can even meet someone who's an adult, but the person will tell you, I don't have consent because the head of the household is there. And so I cannot give you the consent for you to do whatever you want to do. It is more or less about years and are more about dependence, training, and then belonging to a family. Now, since time immemorial, every society has its own practices that passed on to generations, and these practices they varies, they cut across all social lives. It cuts across even farming, it cuts across how we carry ourselves at home, in the community. I remember when we were young, sometimes you'd be told that when you're in a bathroom, do not sing. All these are all cultural that are passed on from generation to generation to protect us, to protect society. And then at the same time, children, there are also norms that society have been using to protect children way before even the Act 560 consolidated all the laws that is required as a country um, to protect children. Now, as an organization, as I said, our work is mainly at the community level. We are constantly at the community, and as an organizer, for the past 5 years, we have engaged a lot of over 1,000 communities working together with the Department of Social Welfare, reaching approximately 1,300 households in about 68 districts across 7 regions in a lot of areas, including child protection. So we have financial inclusion interventions, and then also the child protection intervention. Now, our approach as an organization, because as it's defined in our name, participatory, we employ the participatory approach. And in the child protection, we combine the child rights principles and then the guidelines with respect to the cultural practices. We believe in building child protection from the bottom up and not from the top down. Now, our guiding framework is anchored in participatory co-creation, respect for the community values, and then traditional structures, and then shared responsibility. Now, I'll share a few scenarios, and then together we can ponder over some of these scenarios and how they fit in and how they either help in protecting children at the community level or they hinder the progress that we are all making as stakeholders in protecting children. So these are real life stories that we have encountered on the ground. So the first story, Mr. Fuseni is a cocoa farmer and a father of 3 children. In addition, he also has 3 children of his sisters with him. Each morning, Mr. Abukari would take his motorbike, ride his children to the school. And these children are of the same age. His children and his sister's children are roughly of the same age. But every morning he will take his children to school and then he will return back home. And then together with his sister's children, they will proceed to the farm to go and work. Now, the assemblyman gets information of this. The assemblyman threatens to report him to social welfare, but Mr. Bukari dares him to go ahead and report. Second one is sorry. First was Mr. Husseini. Second one is Mr. Bukari. Mr. Bukari also has a 16-year-old daughter who is called Zinabu. Zinabu has just written her BECE, and then as soon as she was done, Mr. Bukari wants to hand her over to be married to his friend's son who is in Kumasi. Although the girl dreams of furthering her education, but Mr. Bukari would not have it. So Auntie Maggie, who is a neighbor, quickly called the Odukro to report the issue to him. And then the Odukro also calls the Department of Social Welfare and also relays the information to the social welfare. Now, take note of the two stories. The first one, the assemblyman threatens, and then the second one, someone sees what is happening. The person relays the information, and the information gets to the Department of Social Welfare. The third story or scenario is Nana Bedu Okwampa, who is also a chief. Now, he has a vision of ensuring that all the children in his community, every child has a shot at education. So together with the community, they come together to put in place measures to ensure that the children are not distracted and they all focus on their education. And one of the measures is to ban the use of pragya, as we call it, in the community. And most of you would agree with me that a lot of these children who ride this pragya, most of them are children below the age of 18 years, at school going age, but because of some little quick money, most of them drop out of school just to work and get some money for themselves. And we all know what happens if a boy has some little money in his pocket. Now, and then the fourth story is Awo Brewer. This is actually a case that happened in the central region. So Awo Brewer is an 83-year-old grandmother. She has raised many of her grandchildren and currently lives with 7 of them. And among them is Joe. Joe is a 17-year-old first-year nursing student. Awo finances Joe's education entirely from the proceeds of the cocoa farming that they do. But during vacation, Joe is also expected to visit the farm and also support with the labor. Now, Joe returns from school and then he expressed unhappiness in working on the farm, although it is the same cocoa farm, proceeds from the cocoa farm that pays for his education. So he confided in one of the cocoa marketing company, and then the way he presents his case, the person also takes this as a case of forced labor, and then it triggers investigation within the value chain of the company about human rights standards. Now let's look at the first story. Mr. Fuseni, the one who rides his children to school and then come back home and take his sister's children to the farm. Now, we all know how the value or the role of extended family in catering for children, especially for us Northerners, it plays a key role. In some cultures, when you go, the sisters will often give their sons to their uncles to raise them the cultural way. Sometimes to the brothers will give their daughters to their sisters to also raise them and then imbibe in them their culture. And so guardianship of family assumes responsibility for children in the name of fostering. But sometimes they prioritize economic needs and exploitation over education. Resistance to authority. Now, when this case, for instance, came to our attention and then we followed up on the case, when we asked him, he said, no, my children are not in child labor. My children go to school. In fact, when you came here this morning, you saw me. I had just sent my children to the school. So how can the assemblyman accuse me of child labor? Now, upon deeper investigation, we realized that it was a case of communication. So Mr. Fuseni sits in community meetings, and oftentimes we say your children, your children, your children. So he has this mentality that, okay, so if my children are not involved, but it's someone, if my children go to school, but someone else's child is supporting me, then that cannot be classified as child labor. And so we had to take it out from there and see how some of these little miscommunication can affect the message that we communicate at the community level. So culturally, when we go in the local Shi language, which is most of the cocoa growing, which is a tree speaking area, we say womano, womano, womano. And then so some of them would take it like, okay, if it's my child, then cool. But if it is not my child, then that cannot be classified as child labor. So all these little nuances sometimes also affects the message that we communicate at the community level. Now, Mr. Bukari and Zenabu, cultural acceptance of marrying of girls after basic education, regardless of age. In some culture, the girl child is seen, quote unquote, as very, very vulnerable and then likely to bring shame to the house if she is not married off quickly. She will just go and get pregnant and bring shame to the family. So a lot of household would prefer, as soon as they see that the girl has developed some body features that makes her look like a woman, they want to marry her off to someone so that they can protect or they can shield the family from any shame of teenage pregnancy. But these kind of norms or some of these things, it affects these girls' education. Now, Auntie Maggie sees this and then she reports it, which is what ordinarily a normal community can do. But and this issue was handled by the social welfare, and then the marriage was halted, and the father was taken through some counseling and some sensitization, and then also taken through making him sign an undertaking that he's going to rescind or he's going to halt that decision to marry off the girl. And for that reason, the girl was able to further her education. The next one is what Nana Bedu Okwampa is doing. Now, chiefs have authority and people listen to them. So collective agreement reinforces norms that prioritizes education. At the community level, if you have a chief who is able to rally the people around, they are able to exploit some of these cultural norms in addition to the legal guidelines to help in protecting the children in the community. Now, our brewer's case is a very delicate one. The Section 87 of the Children's Act says that no person shall engage a child in exploitative labor. Now, Joe believes that it also defines the exploitative labor as any labor that deprives the child of his health, education, or development. Now, in most of these Ghanaian culture, as Ernest said, if a pilot wants to, if your father is a pilot and he's flying, he he would not carry you with him to the cockpit for you to say that, okay, I'm a pilot. When you also grow, you also have to become a pilot, blah, blah, blah. But deep down, when you go to the ground, extended family is still the first line of protection. And then it prevents abandonment. This is an 83, I think 83 or 87-year-old lady who is still in control of the household, but she cannot do everything alone by herself. And so every child has to contribute their little to the household to ensure that the household, everybody gets what they want and the household is also run. We don't believe in going in and quoting laws, and the hazardous activity framework specifies the kind of work that affects the children or the children cannot do, and then the kind of work that the children can do. So by measuring what the child is doing to the half, and then coming to the conclusion that this does not affect the health of the child, neither does it affect the child's development, then the household counseling with the household can also come in to ensure that everybody understands that we all need each other as a unit to be able to survive the harsh realities of poverty and hardship. Now let's look at some of the ills, some of the very difficult cases that we have encountered at the community level. So Amma, who is 15 years old, was sexually abused by her uncle and became pregnant. She told her mother, who then told the queen mother. Now they called for a family meeting, and then the uncle was charged to appease the gods, pay family with drinks and apologize to Amma. Amma was told to forgive her uncle. The wisdom of others will not allow an elder to be called a fool, as we say. So when the baby was born, the grandmother takes or adopts the child and then hits the father's identity. Now, these are some of the cases or the how community as a unit handles some of these criminal cases that affect a lot of children. Indeed, a recent publication by Child Rights International, just this 2026, showed that about 59.4% of all child abuse cases has to do with defilement. Roughly almost 60% of reported child abuse cases is defilement. And that number nationally is around 30%, which means almost about 70% of almost about 70% of defilement cases go unreported, and it doesn't even get to the courts for justice to be served. It doesn't get to social welfare. And as NS said, it's not just about the criminal liability aspect of some of these cases, but it also, most importantly, the support that that child will receive when these cases get to the attention of authorities, the counseling that would help them to find themselves again, to be children again, to enjoy their childhood again. So these are a few of the many ways of how culturally some community members, even together with community leaders, handle cases of defilement, which per the criminal code, Act 29, is a clear criminal offense. The final story, Kwame, who is 9 years old, has been repeatedly caned by his uncle for wetting his bed. The boy has gone around with wounds due to the bleeding. Neighbors hear the beating and cry, but have agreed that discipline is more important and helpful to stop bad habits. So sometimes to knowingly or unknowingly, the community that is supposed to protect the child often misunderstands the essence of discipline, often misunderstands that uh, a child is a child and a child is supposed to display certain characteristics. They also often misunderstand the fact that no two children are the same. One child can stop maybe bedwetting at the age of 5, another can carry on to maybe 10 years. But oftentimes, comparisons, why are you still wetting your bed at the age of 10? Your colleague here stopped at the age of 5. We make it look as if that child is a disappointment, and then these punishments happen. And because bedwetting is not something that is appealing, oftentimes when these punishments are being meted on these children, nobody talks about it because they believe that he has to stop before he leaves the home and goes out there to disgrace himself. Now, what are some of the effects of some of these punishments? Kwame becomes withdrawn and aggressive in school. He runs away from home twice, and then physical injuries often leads to hospital visits and all that. The lessons here is that discipline without restraint or boundaries become abuse and damages the child's development. Now, of all the stories that I have recounted, some of them you saw how community jumped in to ensure that the children receive the necessary support and protection that they require. The others also, you saw how the community looked on and for these children to be abused, all in the name of discipline, all in the name of protecting family name and family values, all in the name of protecting our culture. Now, when we look at all these stories, the key lessons that come out can help all of us in child protection. It takes a village, enduring values or obsolete tradition. Does it still take a village to protect our children? Is it obsolete, or it is something that is still enduring? Our communities have always had their own ways. And I keep on saying no two communities are the same, and the no two children are the same. Now, cultural norms, modernization has impacted our cultural norms. I think NS elaborated a lot on this bit, where sometimes people want to just stick to my wife, my children alone, and something happening to a child elsewhere doesn't affect them or doesn't concern them. There's also a shift from the extended to the nuclear family. Many of our cultural norms have been recognized and incorporated into our policy framework. Social welfare will tell you that even if a child has to be moved from danger to a different location, oftentimes they would prefer a close family relative that can provide that safe environment for that child. And so some of these things have all been codified and added into our culture to ensure that the children get that necessary support that they need. No two communities are the same. Communities today are shaped by their different experiences um, that influences how children are protected and safeguarded. In some community, when you go, this culture of it takes a village is quite strong there. Someone sees a child who is not in school and immediately acts, probably drag the child to school or drag the child home, find out from the parents while the child is not in school. In other areas too, you would enter the community, and during school time, these children are at the game center and people are going about their business. Nobody really cares about these or the well-being of these children. Now let's look at some of the community lessons. Can we protect children effectively without losing the good part of our culture? Or can we uphold child protection standards without rejecting community systems? Now, as an organization, we believe that prevention is stronger than intervention. What we stand for is to ensure that it doesn't even occur, not to wait for it to occur before we jump in to go and rescue. So most protection happens before harm occurs. In communities, neighbors and elders attempt to correct small problems early, like truancy, neglect, fighting, before it becomes it gets to social welfare and to a larger extent to the courts. Now, social welfare and community child protection committees that we work with, we ensure that they focus now on the identification of the problem. They focus on early identification, sorry, and then home visits. Work with existing structures, not to replace them. So at the community level, we have also come to find chiefs, queen mothers, pastors, imams, family heads to be more than people trust them more than they trust these government officers. And so they are our entry into some of these households and how some of these cases are handled at the community level. Cases are reported and resolved faster when traditional authorities are involved. And it's a good thing. It's an enjoyable thing when you are working in a community and you have the backing of the community. Anytime you enter the community, it makes your work very, very easy due to the level of authority that most of these people have at the community level. Social welfare officers now do community entry through these chiefs and community leaders. Language and framing matters. As I mentioned, with the issue of Mr. Fuseni, who thought that if his children go to school, but his sister's children are taken to the farm, that is not child labor. It brings us to the, as I mentioned earlier, to the issue of how do we frame some of these languages when we go to the community level to engage some of these people. Talking only about child rights and the laws can make community defensive. So framing as our children's future, yen dachi, yen manadachi, good parenting, all some of these catchy words, it helps community to buy in to the message that we are trying to carry across. Awareness campaign also, we try to blend it with proverbs, with drama, with local dialects, and the local jargons to ensure that it sits with the people, because that is how they've lived their life. That is how they understand certain things. And so when you take some of these approaches, it helps for the message to sink deeper and resonate with the people than when you go quoting the Child's Act, the Children's Act, and all those things. It confuses a lot of people. And if you are not careful, the next time you call for a community meeting, you might not go to meet anybody there. Distinguish between culture and harm. We also try to make them understand that not every tradition is harmful. Some practices like fostering apprenticeship and rites of passage, they all have protective intent. The most important thing is that, as has already been said, the interest of the child is always at the center of whatever that we are doing. And whatever we are doing is protecting the child and not harming the child at the end of the day. The goal is to keep the good and then reform the harmful through dialogue and then not condemnation. Programs engage elders to review practices like corporal punishment and early marriages from within the culture. Now, restorative approach to punishment alone. Now, restorative approaches work better than punishment alone. You are not just Ernest mentioned that you find some of the teachers will punish a child, they'll bring him out and you ask the child to be waving and all that. But at the end of the day, what we ask ourselves is how does that discipline, how does it affect the child? How does it benefit the child? How does it prevent the child from repeating what the child has done, or for another child not to repeat what the child has done? So always the emphasis must be on restoring and not on just punishing the child, feel the pain of punishment so that the child will not repeat. No, this keeps restorative. This keeps the child within the household or the community without breaking it. Family conferencing and mediation are now part of case management by the Department of Social Welfare, where they sit with the family and the children, and they all agree on a path on how they are going to go in resolving some of these child-related issues at the community level. Now, another critical aspect is making the children part of the whole conversation. Communities that listen to children protect them better. So when children can speak directly to elders or community leaders, abuse is reported faster. Now, we have even gone further to ensure that we have children on our child protection committees, and the report that comes from these children is even more higher than the report that comes from the community, because their own colleagues trust them more than they trust, sometimes they even trust elders. And so when they realize that a child is in a different situation, they would approach their colleague who is on the child protection committee and report that, do you know this has happened to that person, or do you know this person is going through that? And that child on the committee would also send the information to the leader of the child protection committee, and then the committee would immediately act on that. So getting the children involved in the conversation of protection also helps the children to report these issues. And also at the school level, where you can almost all the time find these children forming clubs, school clubs, and then sensitizing them on these child rights and all that. It also helps to amplify the children's voices. Here, one of the things that we also do oftentimes is to encourage the children to write essays about issues on child protection at the community level. And it is interesting to read the children's perspective on some of these things and how, in their own little understanding, they think that certain child protection or children should be protected within their community. So these are all ways and means through which we give children at the community level voices to also talk about things that affect them. And then we also have our community library intervention, where the children meet weekly to read books, and most of these books have to do with children and child protection, and then they get to discuss and learn a lot about things that affect children and how they can all contribute to child protection. And then the last but not least is the spiritual and moral leaders are the key gatekeepers. We have our pastors, our imams at the community level. From experiences, I've come to understand that they wield so much power at the community level. People hold them in higher esteem. And so when you work with them at the community level, 99% of the time, you are going to get the results that you desire. So churches, mosques, and traditional priests, these are the people that shape the norms on discipline, marriage, and child work. So if they support protection messages, the whole community is likely to follow that path. So training of faith leaders as child protection advocates embed child protection in spiritual, moral, and cultural conversation. We also encourage them of these things at the mosque, at the church, where you get people, the community members gather to come and because there's no better way of serving God than protecting your children, the legacy that God has given to you. So, in recommendation, these are the few recommendations that I have. Cultural norms, in my strong opinion, they remain integral part of our child protection system. And I believe that without them, there is no solid base for us to build upon. PDA Africa, as a unit, as an organization, we encourage communities to view government officers as partners rather than outsiders. And then also we actively collaborate with these, with chiefs, traditional authorities, community leaders, child protection committees who serve as first responders in many communities. So balancing protection approach, we recognize that children cannot be protected by rejecting culture, nor by disregarding established standards. So in conclusion, cultural norms are integral part of our culture. And then the disadvantage comes when norms are applied rigidly without asking, is this the best interest of the child? So I believe that culture is not the enemy. Harm happens when we use culture to justify silence, inequality, or violence. Thank you very much to all of you for your attention.
Thank you so very much as well, Camille. And honestly, both presentations have been so excellent. There's been so much information that has come out. We are truly grateful both to Ernest and to Camille. Thank you so much. And now the floor is open to our audience. We've heard a lot first about even the issue of defining who a child is, culturally versus legally, and how that alone can cause some kind of tension when it comes to issues of child protection. We've heard a lot also about the issue of sensitization and the need for it, that there is still, some level of misunderstanding when it comes to what child protection or child welfare really entails. Some people see issues of child labor, of fostering, informal fostering, or of early marriages just as, things that are not directly applicable to them, even though they are engaged in it as we would define it. We've also heard about how there's even that sense of inside versus outside. Some communities might feel like dealing with child protection issues, reporting on them to formal institutions and structures almost becomes a way of betraying the trust and the communal sense of belonging that you have when you pass information along when it comes to violations of child protection. And there's also been some issues raised in the chat about what the effect is on children, both positive and negative. Negatively, we've seen someone has raised the issue of psychological abuse and traumas that may come as a result of some of these child protection abuses. But also someone raised an issue about how then do children learn their culture? How do they learn their language if we are a little too strict when it comes to some of these child protection issues? So there's been a lot that has been talked about. And we'll now open the floor for questions, for comments, for contributions. I know there are so many people on call with loads and loads of experience, and Victoria's hand is the first to go up. And so I'm going to allow her microphone. Victoria, you can ask your question, quickly followed by Developers Net, and then we'll take a few of the ones that are in the chat as well. So Victoria, over to you. You can unmute your microphone and ask your question. Please go ahead, Victoria, if you are ready. If not, Developers Net, you can unmute your microphone and go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, hello, Victoria. We can hear you now.
Yes, thank you very much, Asida, for giving me the floor. I'm Victoria Esiedwa from the Ghana Early Warning Center. I'm also a principal state attorney with the Office of the Attorney General. But currently, I'm the crime analyst for NCC Coincidentally, I happen to be a member of the National Child Protection Committee. Yeah, so I tend to wear a lot of hats. Yes. Now, thank you very much also to Awusi and Salam for these thought-provoking insights shared so far. Now, as a crime analyst, I'm particularly interested in how we can transform child protection risks into actionable early warning intelligence. As you rightly pointed out, now there's a paradigm shift from taking reactive measures to more proactive measures. I think in nibbling these risks in the bud before they escalate. And you also rightly pointed out that prevention is stronger than reactive measures. So my question is, I mean, from your experience, which community level indicators should analysts prioritize in predicting escalating risks? And how can these indicators be supported? Or for want of a better word, how can they be validated to support preventive measures, either by law enforcement or child protection agencies? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vic. And maybe developers net, let's take your question, and then the presenters and anybody else on call can answer the two questions together. So please go ahead, developers net.
Please, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Great. I have two sets of questions. My name is Yona Keleku from Developers Net. The first one is that the first presenter mentioned the structures that we have established at the community levels to support child protection. He mentioned the Child Protection Committee, he mentioned the elders and all of them. We have quite a lot of them. And then we also have the district level child protection committees, the regional and then the national. Now, my observation is that there is this coordinating gap among these district child protection teams. Often they all operate in silos. So this person is doing something separate, another person is doing it separately. And so there is that lack of coordination. My question is that what can we do to weaken this fragmentation among the structures? That's the first one. Now, the second one is that I was hoping that we are going to have an extensive conversation on the reporting processes when it comes to issues of child protection, because those are really the concern. Because lately, most of the communities that we work in, the people are informed. They are informed of the issue, they know the constitution, they know what their culture says about it, they know which cases need to be handled at the probably DOFSU level, what the chiefs can handle, what CCPC can do. But still, there is that reporting gap. So you have a case, and then probably you report. The victims sometimes have to also pay DOFSU officers to go and cause arrest. And so a child is abused, and this victim have to still go and pay. And sometimes it makes the whole case difficult to handle. What if the victim doesn't have resources? We have Ghana Health Service, but when there are defilement cases and you take it to the hospital, you need to pay like 400 cedis for medical report and something. When recently there was an arrest that we made on a case, we had to pay full close to 600, 700 Ghana cedis. Even that until now, we do not know how the cases are being handled. So I would want your opinion on how best we can handle these things, because they are informed. A lot of them are informed, but still the issues persist when it comes to reporting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a lot to chew on. And I will hand over first to our two presenters to address it. And I've also made provision in the chat box. I know we have a lot of people who are very knowledgeable on the call. You can drop in your comments, your responses to some of these questions in the chat, and we'll try and read them out so that we can all share our knowledge together. Over to you, presenters, please.
All right, thank you, Asida. Let me start with the last person. You see, like in my presentation, I said that the department needs support. From my point of view, in my district, I'm fortunate to have organizations like PDA, International Cocoa Initiative, Plan International Ghana, and UNICEF supporting us in reaching out to the communities, taking them through the formalized, structured referral pathways. And then even at the district level, we have municipal child protection committees where when there are issues, and like I said earlier on, the client cannot go direct to the police station. He falls on the community child protection committee. They refer the issue to social welfare. The social welfare will mediate. So when it gets to a point where the victim needs to go for medical assessment or go to the police with a medical form to the hospital, for us, we are able to waive the fees that the client is supposed to pay because we front it as social workers. And for me, I'm fortunate to have medical social workers within the hospital facility. And when those issues come, because the hospital administrator is part of the Municipal Protection Committee and the health director is there, when you inform them, the child or the victim goes through the medical assessment freely. So it's a matter of how we engage with the stakeholders. For me, I'm fortunate to have my stakeholders one way or the other collaborating to make my work easy. But I know my other colleagues are not having it as easy as I would say I'm having. So the department needs a lot. So the referral pathway is clear. When you have an issue, you know where to go. Like he's saying, the waiver is at the discretion of the doctor who is doing the assessment, because there's a view that when the doctor is needed at the court, he needs to appear to testify vis-a-vis what he put on paper. And the argument is that they will have to transport themselves to the facility. That is why they charge that fee. So if you don't have those structures where you can have the support from the head directorate and other staff, then the issue becomes what he is describing. So I think if the department is given the right resources, we can facilitate these things and the victim will not have any issue going for medical assessment, for the police to prosecute the case, for the case to reach its logical conclusion. I think that is the way. So yes, other districts might have the challenge, and it all boils down to resources and logistics by the department to facilitate. And if you are not fortunate to have CSOs supporting you, it becomes difficult. Thank you. And then from the first question, I think the chief and opinion leaders, when we are able to talk through for them to understand what the traditional cultural norms is talking about and what the law is saying, and we are able to bridge it between the opinion leaders and then the community protection that we form, the former institutions will be able to get more information when it comes to reporting issues. Because for me, I've had a situation where you have a referrer from the paramount chief of an area on his letterhead. telling you that this is what happened, this is where I handed it to, and I'm not getting the result. Please continue and give me feedback. It all boils down to how we disseminate the protection issues and then the referral processes. If they get a proper understanding, they know where to report to, and then together we'll all be able to protect the children within the community. I don't think if a chief reports a subject for misbehaving, the subject can go ahead and chastise the chief because they are the sole custodians within the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So Camille, because of our time, perhaps you can address Victoria's question. She has put it again in the chat box just as a reminder about how we can raise some of these child protection risks and develop very strong and effective early warning intelligence systems. So what are some of the indicators that you think from community level can be raised, and then how they can be validated to ensure that prevention it happens before occurrence?
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to link that particular answer to the the question that was asked about the District Child Protection Committee. Now, I believe the way in which we form the DCPCs, we bring together various stakeholders from all child-related agencies like education, like health, and in some areas, they even co-opt some agencies that don't work directly with children, but as a result of one or two or three cases that they have handled, they co-opt them onto the committees to also contribute. A classic example is in some districts in the Western region, co-opting the immigration officers onto the child protection committees to ensure that they work together to combat child trafficking and all that. Now, how do we ensure that our children, or what's the name? What was the question? Which level of indicators should analysts prioritize? In my opinion, I think first of all, we should look at education. By education, we are looking at attendance, we are looking at attendance, we are looking at dropout rates, children withdrawn from school, and some of these basic information that comes, especially child marriage, fostering, and all that. So we've prioritized education, and then also we prioritize child labor, the sort of work that the children within the communities are used for. We also prioritize sexual abuse, the leadership structure, and then most importantly, the reporting pattern. Someone highlighted how there is a gap between the reporting pattern, which is also a very critical area that I think we should look at. Now, once we have, and then again, it brings me back to the District Child Protection Committee. When all these people are working together, for instance, in one district, the health district education publishes the increasing trend of teenage pregnancy, and immediately social welfare picks up that information. They work together as a unit, and then they go to these communities where this child protection, where this teenage pregnancy is on the ascendancy. So once all these institutions are working together, we have someone from the court who can help in escalating the docket when it gets there and all that. We should be able to address most of these child protection issues that arises at our community level. Now, data is very critical. And so these data, it shouldn't be something that we do it one-off. We should be able to collect it year by year, to be able to do some trend analysis, to be able to tell whether we are making progress, whether our early warning signals are working, whether child protection cases are being prosecuted, what is the percentage of prosecution, what is the challenges, the gap, and all that. I believe once we are able to do that, we should be able to address most of the major issues that happen to our children at the community level. Now, the problem, let me come to the issue of the DCPC that someone mentioned. It's because most of the time when we form these committees, they become redundant. They are supposed to have their own plan. They are supposed to have their own activity plan, monthly, yearly plan to be able to move. And we all know that to be able to move, it also requires resources, which sometimes the district does not also have or want to offer to these committees to be able to work. If these committees could be resourced in a way to be able to also advance to these communities, I'm sure that they can all bring their various mandates to bear to be able to address some of these issues. And I share with you some of the challenges. We've also had to pay for a docket to be moved from one district to the Attorney General's office so that the case can be prosecuted because some people didn't want to be prosecuted. And so the challenges, honestly, they are quite vast. But I believe that if we prioritize education, if you prioritize this child labor abuse and all these marriage practices at the community level, and then make sure that we have concrete data to back them up and also make sure we follow the trend, we should be able to come up with concrete policies that can help us address these things. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, it's 12 o'clock, and I know that our webinar is 10 to 12, but I really, just based on all the comments coming in and some questions, if we could just get 10 more minutes so that we try to wrap up. I see some of the questions in the chat, and we really would want people to maybe try and answer some of the questions in the chat. Presenters, feel free to also answer some of the questions in the chat. There's one question or two questions that I can put together, has to do with when there is disagreement between what traditional, systems and community systems like a chief or a faith leader, between what they are thinking the way is of solving a particular issue from how social welfare officers want to proceed with the issue. And I think that relates to Edem's question that he asked earlier, that how do we ensure that community leaders appreciate that child protection is not only a community responsibility, but also a legal requirement? So what happens when there is that kind of disconnect and disagreement? Who is supposed to give way, or what is supposed to happen? Maybe you could answer that, and then hopefully try to keep your answers a little bit briefer, and then we can take Eric's question as the very last one for this session. Please, over to you.
All right, Asida, let's take a case of defilement. You see, we have what we call the integrated social services, and where the department has been given a system which we call the SWIMS, where we report all cases. The system is telling us that when you have a high-risk case like defilement, you have to work within 24 hours to make sure the child is put to safety. So here, what the chief is saying doesn't come in here. You can take the action, then later, together with maybe the law enforcement authority, we can invite the chief and let the chief understand the consequences and the degree of the offense that the person got him or herself into, and the reason why the social welfare officer or the law enforcement agencies took that action. Like we always say, the child cannot wait. When the child is in danger, we are mandated to move and place the child in a place of safety. And that one, whether you were a chief or what, we will act before we sit down and dialogue and make sure you understand why we did what we did. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that solves that issue for us. Eric's hand has gone down, so maybe give the space to Daniel. If you can quickly unmute, Miracle as well. All right, you can just drop your questions in the chat box, and then maybe the speakers can see it and be responding as they listen to the subsequent questions. All right, over to you, Daniel. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Asida, for the opportunity. So, quick one. I'm curious. I want to know if, first of all, the doctor's salary, if we were to interrogate, are there any allowances that could be linked to them providing this medical support that is required whenever there's an abuse as a way of incentivizing them? If not, can we consider pushing through the Ghana Medical Association advocacy for such an incentive? And then number two, also consider making it mandatory for the Ghana Health Service or Ghana the ministry to the Ministry of Health to take that responsibility of transporting medical doctors to the courts or wherever they may be required to testify on such matters. Maybe if it is considered, perhaps they may be better motivated to support such cases. Thank you.
Thank you. And very well noted. Miracle, we still have about 5 minutes. So Miracle, you get the chance to ask your question as well, and then we can wrap up after that. Oh, Joy.
Okay. Thank
Sorry,
you for
please go
the
ahead. Yes.
hello. Thanks for the opportunity. My name is Miracle from Developers Net, and mine is actually a question, but then a request. So it's that yesterday I overheard some two women conversing, and then I heard a statement that was like, if it was then, like she would have called that child and then questioned the child why she did this and that. But now, or children of these days, nothing can be done as such. So now it's like because of the way the generation has turned into, some of the parents or the elders or the leaders are even scared on how to approach children or how to even intervene for them when the need arises that they're supposed to be helped. So I wanted to be added to information or education out there that we should encourage them that, or we should let the children know that their rights also have a limit, and then at times they should adjust themselves so that they will be spoken to or that they will be helped. And when we say or when we advise them on this, it will help the leaders or the parents or the guardians to also know that, oh yes, we still have a say in the life of this child. And then I think when the need arises, they'll be able to do it without watching back or without being scared that, hey, this same child or hey, someone of this same child will try to stand against me. Thank you.
Thank you, Miracle, and critical reflections as well. Yes, that there is that global trend when it comes to children and their rights and some of the ways that they respond or react when discipline or socialization is taking place. Thank you very much for those reflections. I still see many hands and many comments and many questions asked, but unfortunately, I think we have to wrap up. Maybe the questions about Department of Social Welfare, sorry, Mr. Ewusi can handle it later on. I will check with them backstage if they are willing. We will include their email addresses in the chat or in the email that we will send after the webinar so that you can reach out to them personally and have conversations. Victoria from the National Center for the Coordination of Early Warning and Response Mechanism has also shared her email in the chat box. So if that's something you're interested in, the various development partners on the call, you would like to get in touch with her, see how you can work together, please just reach out to her. And let's try to bridge the coordination gaps right from here as we build these connections. Thank you all so much for your engaging, participating, interested presence on this call. We are truly grateful. And sorry once again that we've run a few minutes over time. Special thank you to our presenters for today, Mr. Ewusi from the Department of Social Welfare and Community Development, and Camille Salam from PDA Africa. We are truly grateful and we really appreciate everything that you've shared with us. We hope that this has been a valuable time spent for you as well. We will share the recording on our YouTube page, and a link to it will be shared in the email we share with you, as well as the presentation slides that were used today. And hopefully they can spur on further conversations. Thank you. See you all again next time, and all the very best for the rest of the day. Goodbye to you all.